Hey guys, how's it going? Malcolm here. Day two of the US Open Chess Championships, although for me it's day one. I took a half point bye for round one, so I'm about to play in round two. I'm about to walk over. I have yet to be in the tournament hall. Hopefully, I'll have some pictures and stuff for you guys. But I'm going to be playing black against John Curcuru, who is rated 2000. I'm ready to get thrashed. We're just going to try and play slow and defensively and take a lot of time, and maybe my opponent will be tired. I don't know. I'm not sure why he has a half point. Maybe he also had a bye. I'm not entirely sure. But I'm looking forward to getting to play. So we'll see how things go after this first round, and we have to expect to take, we're lower rated in this tournament, so we have to expect to take some losses. And once we've done that, then we can finally get to play some people our own rating. So I'm just going to go in, going to try and be relaxed, going to try and get calm. Again, just going to try and quell the emotion. Really focusing on trying not to feel nervous so that way I can take the most possible away from the game. All right, I'll see you guys after the game. I gotta walk over now and see how things are. See you guys after. Bye. Okay, guys. All right, I'm back from what was my round one, but round two of the U.S. Open. And before I begin, let me tell you about the guy that I was playing against. So John Curcuru, I think his name is like the most Chad of a man that I think I've ever met. The guy is at least 6 feet 20. His shoulders were like this wide. He was huge. He was huge. He was like a gigantic jacked guy. He was wearing a Poker Stars cap. He had on like reflective sunglasses and like a necky that went up to here, so you couldn't see his face at all. And his shoulders were gigantic, and he was just very built. And then he was wearing like dark gray, sort of like textured sweatpants with bright orange accents. Just very much, I'm going full Chad on this one. I was pretty intimidated because he's like a bajillion points higher rated than me. And on top of that, the dude just enormous. But because he came across a little bit like one of those like douchey alpha male guys, I kind of wanted to beat him. So let's see how the game went. Let's pull over to the analysis board. Okay, third time's the charm here on going over this game. So I was playing black. My opponent played c4, the English, which I was not super prepared for, but I played it against my coach, and I just don't have a lot of experience here. But I played e5, which is the principled move. You take over the center, things should be okay. My opponent played knight c3, and I played knight c6. I know that normally you'd want to play knight f6, but in this position, you want to reserve the option to play f4. Your opponent's going to try and take a lot of space on the queen side, so you want to be able to take a lot of space on the king side. So my opponent played g3. He wants to get this bishop on this long diagonal. And I played bishop b4, which is a typical like Nimzo Indian. Like if I had a knight here and a pawn here, and the d pawn was pushed, then this would be pinning the knight. But the reason that you don't play this in this line is that your opponent can play here. And this actually isn't hugely advantageous for white, but he's going to try and wreak some havoc with his dark squared bishop. Because once I play knight e7, my opponent takes, I take, and now he has the only dark squared bishop. Luckily, my pawns are set up on dark squares, so he's going to have a little bit of trouble mobilizing. But that's the imbalance of the position. That and the change of the pawns in the center. So my opponent plays bishop g2. He got on this diagonal just like he wanted to, and I castled. My opponent goes pawn a3. And really the only reasonable retreat for my knight is here to c6. If I go to a6, then when b4 comes, my knight's just never going to get out, and it's going to be rough. And lo and behold, b4 does come. And my response is to play d5. His king is not castled. My king is castled, so I want to open the center. My opponent plays pawn takes, and I play knight takes. And then my opponent plays d3. Several different reasons. One, it opens up the bishop. Another thing is that it helps protect some of the weak squares in the position. It's sort of he's setting himself up on light squares now that he has the dark square bishop. At this point, I played knight d4, and this was probably a mistake. Like you can see, the computer doesn't like it. I had an advantage of about 0.4, and now my opponent has an advantage of about 0.5. This is the equivalent of a pawn blunder. And the reason why you'll be able to see pretty quickly after he plays bishop b2, if I retreat this knight, then he takes the pawn, so I have to leave it. But e3 is coming, and it's hard for me to find a plan that successfully defends against this. So I play b6, and there are several tactical reasons that this fails. You can see that he now has an advantage of 1.6, but already like the tactics are difficult for this knight on d4. After he plays d3, e3, then I have to just go back and play knight e6, which is apparently even worse. If I play knight c6, it's okay. Turns out he can't take this because then several bad things happen. Nonetheless, he plays bishop takes e5. He's won himself a pawn, and I just go ahead and ignore that and play bishop b7. In particular, I want to play something like knight takes. So let's say he makes a nothing move, right? I want to play knight takes, and I'm threatening here, and I'm threatening here. It's a nice double attack. So if he takes back, then I take his bishop, and I'm threatening his rook. And if he instead takes the bishop, then I'm taking his queen, and things are strongly advantageous for me here. So that was my thought there. But of course, he doesn't just play a4. Let's go ahead and delete that move. My opponent instead plays knight f3, and so now these bishops aren't staring at each other, so this is no longer a threat. So my opponent's just cleanly up a pawn. And so the problem that I have right now is that this knight literally can't go anywhere. Like, all of these forward squares are defended, right, by the pawn, and by the knight. And then all the retreat squares are taken by my own pieces. So I think, let's play c5. This is actually the best move according to the computer. I was pretty proud of it. And queen b3 is a mistake on his part. And I, like, this equalizes again. So I take the pawn, he takes the pawn. And what I should next do is play a5. Takes. I have a passed pawn over here. But that's not what I played. I did not play a5. After c takes b4, a takes b4, I played queen d7. And this is wrong. I should actually play queen e7. I want to eye this pawn. I want to eye this pawn, if I can get my diagonals correctly. And my opponent just ignores this threat because I'm not fast enough, right? I already have one attacker. If I had moved here, then I would have two attackers, and things would be strong. But instead, I end up wasting a tempo. After he castles, I play queen here, and that's just not enough. So he plays rook a b1. And by this point, we've already been playing the game. He used about 30 minutes. I'd used about 40 minutes. So we spent a lot of time thinking here. And I think, okay, well, I'm not going to be able to get this pawn. He's got two defenders. I have two attackers. I need a third attacker in order to get this pawn. That's going to be a little difficult. I'd have to do something like this rerouting of the knight or something to that effect. So I think, okay, well, let's take this open file. That's the one thing I have in this position, right? And my opponent, recognizing that there are some threats here, in particular with discoveries with this knight. So I go ahead and take this open file, which is apparently incorrect. And my opponent plays bishop a1, recognizing that there are tactics against his bishop along the rank. And so I play rook c7 because I have come to take this file. And my opponent plays knight e5. And the threat here is he just wants to play here. I double up on this open file, and he just closes the file down. Smart move by him. But I think, okay, go ahead. And he plays here. And now the thought is I want to be able to kick this knight out, right? So there are two reasonable retreats for my queen that actually threaten anything. One is queen d7, and one is queen e8, both of which threaten to put the bishop here and make life difficult for him. Maybe he pushes the pawn, it's not entirely clear, but that should unblock at least part of this. And I played queen e8, and that's a blunder. That's a huge blunder. You can see the scoreboard going wild here. Turns out bishop d7, queen d7 is a little bit better. That sort of maintains the sort of worse but manageable position that I have. But I play queen e8, and he immediately forks my queen and my rook. And my bishop, actually. This is just terrible. This is not good in the slightest for me. I admit my mistake, and my opponent takes here. Now, I was trying to figure out if there's some way that I can just be down the exchange instead of down a piece. What I ended up playing was rook here, bishop takes, and I can't take the bishop back because the queen defends, so I just move my rook back. But the thing I was trying to figure out in this position is if I could play something like this. Here, and then if something like this takes, and I've got a queen for two rooks and a piece, which is not great, but you can see that the computer says it's about 2.3. But this line actually just doesn't work for me, partially because my opponent can just do something like this. And then I'm not threatening the queen anymore. They've taken another piece. Now I'm just down a rook and a piece, so things are bad. The move that I ended up playing is the reasonable one, but things are very bad now. I'm down a piece, and my opponent has more space, and my king is going to be less safe in just a second here. So I move my rook back, my opponent takes, and I take with the pawn. I know that I don't want to take with the queen because if I go here, my opponent's going to trade queens, and then I'm just down a piece and some pawns. So like things are not good here. So instead, what I play is pawn takes. And so while this pin is annoying, at least my queen hasn't been traded, and I have some options for counterplay. So my opponent goes ahead and plays bishop here. And what I should have done is if I'm going to get active with my rooks, I should get in there now. But I play the timid move here, sort of trying to stabilize myself from having lost the piece. But this is too weak, too slow, in the words of Magnus Carlsen. And so he plays rook ba1. He wants to come for this pawn. My queen is a little bit overloaded, as it were. And so now I choose to get active. So my opponent plays here, and I say, okay, let's trade some rooks. And he trades rooks with me, and I manage to get these checks in. My opponent plays e4. And so now the problem I have is it's going to be really hard to check this king. It's really hard to get in here, right? These pawns do a really good job of blockading. His position is really well glued together. And the thing that I forget is that this is a threat. So I think the thing that I played next, and let's double check here, is I played king f7. So one of the things that I was annoyed about was this, right? I didn't want to have to keep my queen tied down. So I played king f7, but I just totally forgot that this was a threat. And so check, here, check, so things are getting worse now. This is not good. And then pretty quickly here, things get bad. So my opponent plays queen a2, the threat being to play check, and if my queen moves anywhere, he can take the rook, and otherwise he's coming in to mate me, and that's actually exactly what happened. I played queen c8, protecting my rook, but it doesn't matter. I'm actually coming in and getting mated, and that is the end of the game. So that's how the game went. All right. So we're 0-1 to start the tournament, but my opponent was rated 2,000 and just a big, intimidating dude. I'm pretty proud, actually, of the fact that I sat there and I played pretty reasonably. Like, even when I was down a pawn, things were okay for, like, a long time. The game ended up being 36 moves, but I think even 20 moves in, things were okay. So, slightly before that. Like 18 moves in, things were mostly okay. And I felt like I was getting some pressure for the exchange of the pawn. I'm uncomfortable against English openings, but that's okay. But I didn't feel emotionally overwhelmed, which was nice. Maybe it's because this was at the end of a long day rather than like the morning, and I had other things to take care of all the way up until the tournament happened. But I'm pleased. I'm looking forward to tournaments becoming more normal for me. Anyways, let's all hope that this becomes something that's reasonably editable into something somewhat entertaining. And I'll see you guys tomorrow. I don't know my pairing yet, but I'll let you know. Oh, and one more thing. I'll be right back. Aha! So I'm back. One of the things that I wanted to figure out was what my rating would be after this game, and I found a nice rating calculator that'll help me figure this out with you guys as we go along. So I played one game against a 2,000, and before this I was rated 1246 with 9 games. So my new rating should be 1244. So I lost 2 points from losing that game. Hard to be upset about that. I mean, in 4 games, even though I won 2, I managed to lose almost 100 points. So losing 2 points, not the end of the world. All right. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a good night.